Hi, I'm Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Abstract No Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He's a veteran e commerce founder who built a high growth brand only to watch 50% of his revenue stolen by copycats overnight. No other than Mr. Alan Lee.
Hey Daniel, nice chatting with you.
Welcome, Mr. Allen, on Book 101 Review. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Yeah, so I think you got pretty much all of it. Yeah, I'm an entrepreneur working on a business called Copycatch right now, and we help brands who are struggling with dealing with people who are knocking out their products and undercutting them on Amazon. So we help these brands, remove these infringers and pursue damages in the process. So that's what we do.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Mr. Allen. Thank you. So today, let's talk about why takedowns are an effective strategy against bad actors. So let's start by defining terms. In the context of online bad actors, is it the trolls, spreaders, or misinformation or malicious influencers? What distinguishes strategic takedown from healthy debate or critics? What's the intent?
Yeah, so good question. There's a lot of different forms of bad actors, especially in the age of AI. It's getting increasingly difficult to tell what's real.
Yes.
And, bad actors are also, they're very smart and they're very savvy, right? And they're actually probably, you know, one of the power users of these tools, right? To, you know, scam, dupe, trick you, right? Into
Yes.
ultimately giving them your hard-earned money, right? And so, for the context of what we do, we're especially focusing on e-commerce, physical products, right? And obviously, I know there's other forms of impersonation, like people pretending to use Matthew McConaughey's voice, deep fakes and all that stuff, right? So that's a kind of different um, industry or different problem, if you will. We're focusing on e-commerce industry, where let's say if you're an e-commerce seller and you put in a lot of time and effort to develop your product and your brand, right? You probably spent a lot of time and money on advertising, creating the
Yes.
content, taking high quality pictures of your products, right? And only to find that after your initial success, you're getting the customers, to find your product knocked off or duped on marketplaces like Amazon or Walmart, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you know overnight, you might see your sales drop, and your immediate your immediate reaction is, I got to do something about this, right? Because these guys are taking my lunch, in essence, right?
Yes.
And so most sellers, what they'll do is, they'll Google or they'll ask ChatGPT, like, what should I do? And, by default, ChatGPT or whatever, the AI will tell them, hey, just file takedowns, right? And so what is a takedown? The industry term is DMCA takedowns. Um, Basically, the platforms have a responsibility to make sure that if you have a legitimate IP, for whether it's a trademark, copyright, or patent, people are not supposed to infringe on that, right? And DMCA
Mhm.
takedown is a way for an owner or brand owner to inform the platforms, like, hey, somebody's copying my image, or somebody's using my trademark term, or somebody is um, violating my patent, right?
Yes.
So the issue is that it's entirely up to the platforms to make that determination of whether that's infringing or not, right? And if you think about it from an incentives perspective, right, what is platforms incentivized by, right? They want more sales, right? So they don't really care where the sales come from, as long as people are transacting on their platform, they will make money, right? So they don't have any actually incentives to take down listings unless the infringement is so obvious, right? Like, and especially for smaller businesses, they don't give, you know, they don't really give a crap about them, right? If you're
Yes.
Nike or you're Lululemon or you're, um, a big brand, and you file takedowns, like of course they're going to be a lot more responsive to, you to help you take down these counterfeits, right? But if you're a mom and pop shop, which
Hmm.
99.9% of the business in America is, right? They're mom and pop shops, right? They're considered small businesses, right?
Yes.
Uh, what if the platforms don't enforce your IP, what can you do, right? There's nothing you can do, right? And a lot of times, and I'm just sharing this from my personal experience because, you know, I in the beginning that's what I did, right? I thought this was the right thing to do, right? And it was working in the beginning, but like I said, right, like after 15, 20 takedowns, they kind of just stop. They'll just kind of not really respond to you. They'll just start ignoring you, right? And a lot of times, you know, the platforms will actually inform the bad actors, like, hey, can you change your title to not use these keywords, or can you remove these images from your listing? They will actually kind of alert them to let them know that you're onto them, right? So, and obviously these people are smart too. They'll figure out all the loopholes to get around kind of the uh, initial detection, if you will, or the initial claims, right?
Yes.
So that's why takedowns are ineffective in terms of uh, serious IP enforcement. Um,
Hmm.
sorry, it's still quality.
No worries.
There we go.
No worries.
Yeah.
So let's say many people feel a moral imperative to confront harmful speech. When does it necessary confrontation cross into a territory to take down strategy that might be backfire?
Yeah, it's a good question, right? So it's kind of like a game of chess, right? So
Hmm.
if you're a really good player and you can win the game in a few moves, you don't want to alert the other player what your game strategy is, right? So you want to kind of be secret about it. Well, if you start filing takedowns, then those people are going to be on alert, right? And so, uh, specifically about this takedowns versus taking legal actions, right? So obviously takedowns stopped working for me, and the only way I could go forward is by taking legal actions, right?
Yes.
So the thing that I found out, which I think would be valuable for any online business owners, it's kind of a misconception that lawsuits are expensive and lawyers are expensive, and a majority of the time that is the case. However, in these type of cases, um, you guys can Google it. It's called Schedule A. It's a special instrument that allows multiple defendants to be grouped in one suit, versus going one on one, suing one company at a time, right? And in many cases, when there's a popular product, it gets copied. There could be hundreds of copycats of infringing sellers, right? So that allows the law firms to pursue these cases on a contingency basis. Meaning, if you're a brand and you have a popular product and there's a ton of people copying you, you may not have to pay a lot of money up front. And in my case, I didn't have to pay anything up front because there were just like so many of these bad actors, right? And when the attorney looked at the case, he's like, hey, yeah, like you have a pretty strong claim. This seems like a really viable case, so I'll waive the legal fees, right? So you can actually pursue these cases without having to spend a lot of money up front. And I think that's one thing that owners definitely need to understand. You know,
Mr. Allen, from your observation, what is the primary psychological or strategic miscalculation that well intentioned people or organizations make when they decide to take down a bad actor?
um, what? Sorry, can you repeat that question again?
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah.
So, in your observation, what is the primary psychological or strategic miscalculation that well intentioned people or organizations make when they decide to take down a bad actor?
Yeah. So I think they think that's the end, right? It's, you file a takedown, they just go away and they never come back, right? But think about
Yes.
it this way, for a lot of people, you know, it's very much like biology, right? It's like there's the host and there's the parasite,
Hmm.
right? And in online business is very much like that, right? You know, these people, are, this is their way of living. They don't
Yeah.
see it as I'm copying you or I'm violating your IP. For them, this is just their way of living, right? And so they're not going to stop, right? Unless they've been taught a lesson, unless there's real consequences, right? And that's the biggest mistake that people make when they try to enforce these things on their own via takedowns, is because, there's no consequences, right? There's no consequences for the bad actors. There's no consequences for the platforms, and ultimately, you can't get any money back, right? And what these bad actors do is they will just spin up another listing. They'll just spin up another listing, right? And in fact, that's like what these people do these days, today in 2026. You know, because they know that they're copying another product, right? And at some point, they might get taken down. And so what they do is they preemptively create multiple duplicate listings of their product. So kind of flooding the market, right? So it's kind of like, okay, if one goes down, I still have these other listings, right? So takedowns is kind of like this endless game of whack-a-mole, right?
Hmm.
And I think you know, that's something that owners should consider when they are, you know, wanting to find maybe a more permanent solution than kind of this endless game of whack-a-mole, right?
Sir Alan, let's talk about the dynamics and effectiveness. Beyond increasing visibility, how does a public takedown attempt actually empower a bad actor's narrative or community?
It's an interesting question. So, like I said earlier, like, for these people, it's just more about survival. And there's kind of a network of these, let's call it websites, that tries to warn people that, you know, it's kind of like, hey, if you're going to commit a crime or if you're going to copy this brand, if you're going to copy this product, kind of make sure don't use these words or don't, use these images. It's kind of like a network of watchers that warns sellers,
Hmm.
basically like, hey, if you're going to do it this way, right? So, yeah, that's,
So,
yeah.
Mr. Allen, what are the collateral damage risks? How can takedown attempt inadvertently harm bystanders, platforms, or legitimate discourse in the same sphere?
I mean, I think takedowns has its place in terms of, the IP enforcement. piece, right? And for a lot of people, that is probably the first thing they should try to see if that resolves the issue for them. But in my experience, like that doesn't really resolve the issue, right? It's kind of like, taking something away from a kid only is going to make the kid want it even more. Right? So
Yes.
it's kind of like that working with the takedowns, right? You squat, you squash them, they pop right back up, right? Because there's no consequences, right? So I think the issue is that it's inconsistent. It's inconsistently enforced, and um, it's very frustrating, right? Because infringement is kind of like a yes and no, right? Kind of a
Yes.
black and white kind of situation, right? Um, and the fact that it's inconsistent makes it like a very poor solution for everybody involved, for the platform, for the sellers, right? Um, so it erodes trust, and I think you know it hurts everybody in the end, right?
Bad actors often operate with different ethical and traditional constraints, Mr. Allen. What does a asymmetry or yes, asymmetry willingness to lie, speed over accuracy, exploiting platform algorithms make this conventional fast-based takedown a losing game?
Yeah, interesting question. Like I mentioned earlier, right? These people are getting sophisticated. They kind of know, to not, for example, if you have a trademark for your product, your brand, they will definitely know to not use that word anywhere in the listing, right? And they kind of see how you market, right? Like they can go on your website, they can see how you take your pictures, right? They can see the marketing copy that you're using, right? And anybody is smart enough now to then upload those information and then just use any of these AI tools to say, hey, create something very similar, right? And so if you don't have the right IP to protect your product, um, you know, you're inevitably they're gonna come after you, right? They're gonna take your lunch, right? Because for them it's a matter of survival, So and the tools nowadays makes it really easy to essentially duplicate your entire site in like seconds, right? Create images that just like yours in seconds, right? So that's why IP protection is really like a key in this day and age.
Key indeed. So, Mr. Allen, as a veteran e-commerce founder, what are your short-term and long-term goals?
So my short-term and long-term goals are really the same. I'm very much focused on building out Copycatch, because I've went through this process myself, and I've actually now figured out how to effectively address this problem through the Schedule A lawsuit method that I mentioned earlier. And now, I'm building a service that will help make it easy for brands and law firms to tackle this problem at scale. In the beginning, when I was doing the evidence collection part, because as part of the court proceedings, you had to document like, hey, this is their listing, this is their seller info, stuff like that, right? I was doing that manually, you know, and it took a lot of time because there were hundreds of listings you had to document, right? And you have to be 100% correct because you know the law requires that, right, to win a case, right? So that's what I'm building now, is using AI to automate some of that process to save a ton of time and making sure that the evidence is ready for the case. And so we use AI to find the infringers for you. We use AI to estimate the sales and collect the evidence report that is needed by the court. and we work with partner attorneys who will then handle your case, right? So I cared a lot about the small business owners, the mom and pop shops like myself, right? And so I know those people are usually, you know, the last people to get helped, right? And so I want to use, AI for good and try to help these people that I know that are dealing with this problem, right?
Well, good luck to your goals, Mr. Allen, and looking forward for more success. And what would be your piece of advice for those people out there who want to be like you?
uh, uh, well, I don't know if there's people that want to be like me. I think people should be wanting to be the best version of themselves. I think practically speaking, if you're a business owner and you're doing online business, um, you got to think deeply about creating IP that will protect you. Whether it's trademark for your product and brand name, copyrights for your images, and or if you're an inventor, definitely consider getting a patent. Um, you need some ways to kind of protect yourself when the bad actors inevitably show up, right? Um, and I'll just kind of share some more specific advice. A lot of people don't know that you can copyright 750 images in one copyright, and I think the cost is like $50 or something like that, right? And that's what a lot of these people do, right? It's like they'll steal your images, they'll kind of edit it a little bit, they'll Photoshop their products in. So protecting your images is just like a must for for any online business owners, right? So that's my advice. Oh, you're muted.
Thank you. So, Mr. Allen, thank you for that advice. And can you please recommend a book or books that influenced your journey?
Yeah, a book that's influenced me a lot is definitely the Almanac of Naval Ravikant.
Mm-hmm.
I think probably a lot of people, at this point should know about him. But in the earlier days when I was in my 20s, um, I spent a lot of time reading his tweets, and then somebody took all his tweets and compiled it into a book, which I have. Um, and those advice that I've gotten from, or that I've listened or tried to implement in my own life has definitely helped me, in terms of entrepreneurial success and also just trying to be a good person.
Thank you for the recommended book, Mr. Allen. And before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please to listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in sixth season, abstract poetry in third season, and of course my book 101 review in sixth season too. Comedy 101 third season, and food 101 in sixth season as well. Geography 101, love letters, movie 101 review, music 101 in its fifth season, Science 101, Sex 101 in fourth season, Trivia 101, Law 101, Mental Health 101, Motivation 101, Entrepreneurship 101, and of course, my Bible Verses 101 are my baby podcasts. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So ultimately, Mr. Alan, if a goal is to reduce harm and influences of a bad actors, what is the single most important metric or outcome we should focus on rather than winning the public confrontation?
um,
Hmm.
Ultimately, it's about getting return on investment for your product and brands that you're creating, right? Regardless of whether or not you know anything about IP, when you're creating a product, you are creating intellectual property, right? So I think it's making sure that's protected, that investment is protected, and making sure that when you do decide to enforce IP, there's a monetization component, right? There's how much can I get from going after the bad actors, right? Versus just spending a ton of money or time doing endless takedowns, right? So that's what I was saying.
Well, thank you, Mr. Allen, for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So can you please invite our listeners to support your advocacy, your business, or whatever you want to promote on Book 101 Review?
Sure, yeah. If you are dealing with copycats undercutting you on Amazon or Walmart or TikTok Shop or any of the marketplaces, check out copycatch.ai. So once again, it's copycatch.ai.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Allen Lee because if you support him, for sure, more and more empowering advocacy like this to rise. So, Mr. Allen, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Daniel.
Maricon people, see you soon.